The numbers don't lie. That's the focus of tonight's angle. 218, not 200, not 205, not 216, it's 218.
The tellers agree in their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 434. The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 203. Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 20. Byron Donalds of the state of Florida has received 20. Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 201, with one member as present. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 1. Kevin Hern of the state of Oklahoma has received 2. No member-elect having received a majority of the votes cast, Speaker has not been elected. The House stands adjourned until noon tomorrow.
And Samantha Fox, my senior producer, receives a vote from me, okay? Well, you need 218. That's the number you need if you want to be Speaker of the House. Well, it could be fewer, technically, if members vote present or other members are absent from the floor for maybe medical or other reasons. But whatever you think of the Freedom Caucus for opposing Kevin McCarthy, or whatever you think of McCarthy's record, in the end, this is a numbers game. McCarthy, you could argue, and people are arguing that, has had months to muster the votes he needed. And after 3 days of voting, he came up 20 shy, and that was 11 votes. Now, the numbers still aren't budging, and as for McCarthy's opponents, well, they claim that they're standing on principle, and I understand their points, but they don't yet have an alternative who himself or herself can gather the requisite 218 either. That's where we are. So this process is messy, and you kind of don't want to look at it at times, but it is what it is. The Republican Party is not a monolith. It has establishment types, it has populists, and some moderates. There are 3 scenarios, basically, that are possible now. 1, the Freedom Caucus basically take McCarthy's concessions as a win, and enough of them support him for Speaker. Number 2, McCarthy could withdraw and allow another candidate for Speaker to be proposed, one who presumably could get 218 votes. We've heard a number of people's name mentioned. Steve Scalise is one of them, but others could emerge as well. There's a 3rd scenario. Moderate and establishment Republicans could strike a deal with Democrats, whereby McCarthy or another Republican actually gets to be called Speaker, but essentially both parties share power on the committees. Now, the 3rd possibility, a lot of people say, oh, it's far-fetched, never going to happen. It probably is far-fetched. But the folks opposing McCarthy ought to realize that they are playing with fire here. And you have to think of it this way. Did any of them, when they were campaigning, promise the voters that in the event that they had the majority in the House, they would be willing to turn power over to the Democrats if they didn't get their way on a number of points? I'm not saying the points aren't important. But I don't think they campaigned on that, even though they campaigned on principle. And what do they think the voters are going to say, though, if that is what happens in the end? And at some point, if this goes on day after day after day, there may be other problems. And I'm talking serious problems that the Republicans could get blamed for.
Something that the Democrats and some Republicans have started to hit now is that this might be a national security issue. If you look in your Constitution, the first officer that's mentioned for the United States is the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House is the constitutional officer for this branch of government. You have Democrats and Republicans who are starting to say, wait, we can't get briefings on important things that we need to talk about. What would happen if there were to be a crisis? That's a problem.
Look, no one's been more critical of the establishment GOP than I've been. In December, I devoted a lot of time, you all remember it, to exposing the waste, fraud, and abuse in the $1.7 trillion omnibus bill that the Senate Republicans voted for on issues from that ridiculous infrastructure compromise to immigration to China trade. I've been battling the establishment forces on Capitol Hill for decades, and also when we had a Republican president. That went on for years and years. But Congressman Bob Good couldn't have articulated the conservative populist position on all of this any better.
Crisis after crisis, $32 trillion in national debt. And we just spent $1.7 trillion. Both parties, Republicans joining in the Senate, a few in the House, to pass a $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill. We have got to have a leader who not only has true conservative convictions that reflect the majority of Republicans who sent us here, but yet a courageous leader.
Courage, yes, that's in short supply in Washington. But one also has to ask the question of how you get from point A to point B. How does stopping McCarthy move the needle toward America First solutions? The way to advance the populist cause is to get more power, to elect more members, not to grandstand. And you get concessions, absolutely. But if you get the concessions and then you still oppose the person who's giving you the concessions, what does it all mean in the end? To a lot of folks, it all begins to look unserious at a time when we need a very serious approach to real-world problems. But there's a good news story out there as well, because we saw what works. It can work. President Trump showed us. Populist policies, yeah, put into motion, they're successful. He delivered peace, he delivered prosperity, wages were up, taxes and regulations were cut, the border was secure, there were no new wars, and China was held accountable. That was serious stuff. It all worked. President Trump won more votes than any Republican presidential candidate in history, and right now, tonight, he's urging the Freedom Caucus to take the win and support McCarthy. So I don't think any of the Republican holdouts campaigned on a platform that included turning power over to the Democrats, which tonight remains a distinct possibility. Principal disagreements? You bet they exist. I have a lot of them with the establishment. And I'm as frustrated as anyone is about the spending. It's hideous. But none of this gets any closer to reining it in, or holding Biden accountable, or frankly investigating the COVID cartel, which we desperately need to do. And as for McCarthy, let's remember this. If the party had won more seats, he probably would have had an easy time sailing into the speakership. But despite the huge sums of money that he helped raise for the party, there wasn't a red wave. So here we are. And that's the angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.